All right, well, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. Welcome and to the Think Tullahoma 2040 Comprehensive Plan public meeting. It's very important for the success of this plan to have your input, so we appreciate you being here tonight. We want to encourage everyone to social distance and wear masks. There are masks available in the back. There's also hand sanitizer placed around. There's water in the back too if you'd like to have a cold water. The bathrooms are in the front up here to your right. If you have not completed the comprehensive plan survey, please go to Tullahoma TN. Can you hear? Philip, can we help turn this up? Oh, you can hear me? Back there? It's a little muffled. Maybe if I turn it a little bit. Better? Oh, okay. Masks. Oh, that's much better. Thank you. All right, I'll just stay back. Sorry. So hopefully most everyone here has taken the community survey that's available at tullahomatn.gov. It's the first item on that page if you go, and it takes about 9 minutes to complete. You can also continue to send your feedback throughout the next few months. These sessions are being recorded. They're also being live streamed. And I want to thank the school system for allowing us to use their facilities. Great partners so that we can get this taken care of. And I will introduce Mayor Ray Noes just to say a few words before we turn it over to the Walker Collaborative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I want to sincerely thank each of you for being here tonight, because you are who are going to make Tullahoma for the next 20 years. So it's good to see this room full tonight. I did not have a lot of prepared remarks, so I'm only going to take about 30 minutes of your time. No, seriously, as Winston has already said about this survey, it's very important that you get your input. Of course, these surveys are rather objective, and this opportunity tonight will allow you to expound upon what you contributed on the survey. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Walker Collaborative Group, Mr. Phil Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Now, I know everybody can hear me, even if I got a mask, right? Can people hear? Okay, good. Thank you for being here. We're gonna, if somebody can hit the lights. By the way, this is one of those auditoriums where, you know, usually you have a choice on light level. It's like all or nothing here. And the only way you're gonna be able to see what we're showing you is if it's all off. But we got a few doors open. Don't fall asleep. We'll try to keep you awake. But anyway, and real quick, you know what? I can see silhouettes pretty well. How many of y'all attended our July 6th public kickoff meeting? If you could show your hands. Okay, so I'll apologize up front because a lot of the slides here, this is kind of an abbreviated version of that presentation, but what we wanted to do is offer a series of meetings that were out in the community, and a lot of this is going to be, and I'll tell you the agenda in just a second, but a lot of this part, or this meeting, is really about an open house, not so much just, you know, presentation and all that, but like walking around to these different issue stations we've got set up and just talking with people. But anyway, let me get going on this. So my name is Phil Walker. I'm with the Walker Collaborative. I'm a planner. I'm based in Nashville. And you can see our other consultants listed here. Keith Covington over here. Raise your hand, Keith. Keith's an architect, urban designer, and planner. He's based in Franklin. We have Tullahoma's very own Liesl Gothert right here, born and raised here. She focuses on transportation issues, mobility. And last but not least, Randy Gross. Randy is an economist and a strategic planner. And you can see the list of steering committee members who are kind of overseeing this whole project. Can any of the steering committee members who are here raise your hand, please? Just so we can, yep, I see a lot of hands being raised. Great. And we want to thank them for all of their work on this project. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to, over a couple of slides here, we're going to talk about, for those of you I mean, obviously some of you went to the public kickoff meeting, but for those of you who weren't part of that, we'll kind of tell you what this project's all about. We're going to all talk about some initial observations on all the key issues, and we'll be fairly concise on that. Then we'll turn the lights back on, and we'll just basically answer questions and hear your thoughts. You know, give us your ideas on the future of Tullahoma. And then after that, you know, as I mentioned, we have 4 different workstations that we've set up, or issue stations, whatever you want to call them. One is on land use and development. Another, and I'm trying to remember where these are. Okay, over there, land use and development. Mobility, Liesel will be over there, the mobility issue. I'm taking natural and cultural resources, which is right back there. And then Randy will talk about economic development and housing issues right over here. So that's where we'll be located after this. One other thing to keep in mind, there's a map where between the numbers 4 and 5 on that wall, and that is a dot exercise map. We've got a bunch of color-coded dots that represent things like where you live, where you work, or there's even a color if you work out of your house, that's orange, and where you go to school. Is that one? Do we have school or not? Maybe not. Yeah, we do have that, yeah. And then where you go for fun, you know, where you shop or dine or things like that. So anyway, we'll have somebody kind of guiding you through that if you want to do that after this, after the presentation part of this. So for those of you who aren't familiar already with what a comprehensive plan is, it really is a blueprint for your community as far as future growth or not growth. I mean, there are going to be some areas that you want to save from development, but it addresses all those key issues like land use and development, mobility, economic development, housing, issues like that. And it should basically answer 4 fundamental questions. Number 1, where are we now? In other words, a snapshot of what your current conditions are physically, economically, socially. Number 2, where are we headed? In other words, what are the trends, you know, that have occurred over the last few years? So where are you headed as a community? Number 3, where do you want to go? And that's why we're doing this tonight, and all these other nights we'll have meetings, is to find out what your vision is for the future. Because, you know, we're not experts on Tullahoma, except Liesel is. We may be planning experts, but not necessarily experts on Tullahoma. And what we have to do is find out what you want the community to be in the future, and then we can figure out from a technical perspective how to get you there. And that's what number 4 is. How do you get there? You know, that's the detailed plan. So that's a comprehensive plan in a nutshell. Whoop, I think I went backwards. It's kind of hard to see buttons when it's this dark. So why do you want to prepare a comprehensive plan? Well, one thing, you want to build consensus so that everybody's on the same page about growth and development issues in the future. Also, it's the basis for your zoning, because out of this plan will be what we call a place types map, and it color codes different types of places, and we describe them, and we have imagery of what that place looks like, and go into a lot of detail in the plan that you can then take and update your zoning, which might mean taking some of your current zoning districts and tweaking them. It might mean new districts, which is pretty likely. And so it's really kind of the foundation for your zoning. Number 3, to secure funding for projects. You know, the city of Tullahoma, just like other cities, is constantly seeking grants for projects. And it's very competitive. And you've had a lot of success, but anytime you can pursue a grant for a project that's tied to a broader plan, you're going to be that much more competitive. So that's another reason. Number 4, enhancing the quality of life. And that's important not only for the citizens directly, for you, but also when it comes to business and industrial recruitment, you know, an enhanced quality of life, there are certain things that companies look for when they're going to decide where to move their company or start their business. It may be a vibrant downtown, it may be a greenway system, it may be bike lanes, you know, a whole bunch of different things like that. But that's one thing, one reason why enhancing quality of life is important, as well as obviously just for the sake of the citizens. And then finally, fiscal efficiency, to be able to really maximize infrastructure investments, you know, that are tied to a plan. So this is a 5-step process. Right now, we're kind of we've pretty much completed task 1, which is kicking the project off and starting our research. Now we're doing all these public meetings. You know, we had 3 meetings earlier today. Tonight, we've got this meeting. The next 3 nights, we're going to be meeting in other elementary schools and have a series of stakeholder focus group meetings throughout the next 3 days. Randy is doing his economic assessment and analysis work. The next time we're here in mid-November will be for the charrette, and that's this intensive multi-day brainstorming activity where we engage the public to come up with ideas that'll be the basis for the plan. And at the end of that 6-day period, we'll actually present to the public the concept plan. Then we'll get feedback from the community on that, go away and put the plan document together. We've already achieved quite a bit on the background information part of that. So anyway, that's the order, and then we'll come back, we'll present the detailed plan, get feedback yet again, and then revise it, and then you'll have your plan. Now that's the easy part. The challenge is implementation, right? And that's something that we'll put a big focus on. We have a section of the plan just on implementation, and so hopefully it'll be a plan that actually gets implemented. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Keith.
Thanks, Phil. That's kind of, I think we maybe need to turn it. I think it's up a little too high. Well, it's great to be back here. So as Phil said, we're kind of in the midst of this, between this task 1 and task 2, where we're starting to really start to take a closer look at all the data, and we'll be presenting a lot of the results of that assessment and analysis at the charrette. But we just wanted to, okay. Does that help? That helped a lot. Yeah. So we just wanted to run through some of those things so that you know these are the things that we're looking at. So starting off with kind of the natural features, we always do that with a community. Look at the natural features because natural features drive a lot of what can happen in the future and what's happening now on the ground. So we look at things like topography, and we start to look at where are the really steep slopes that we need to stay away from, where are the more gentler slopes, and so forth, and start to look at how that both shaped the town over time and may shape it in the future. We also look at all of your water resources, your water bodies that you have, the degree of floodway and floodplain, which obviously would be a major impact on development, and looking at all of the elements associated with that, including wetlands too, which are directly related to those. Then we start to look at the built environment. We'll do a quick analysis of existing land uses. You'll see actually those maps on the wall tonight. These are based on the county's assessor data, but they give us a good indication of where where uses are and how they're distributed throughout the town. Some of the obvious initial observations, you guys know this because you live here, but your commercial is really centered in your downtown and along your major corridors like Jackson and 55, and then you quickly transition to residential from the historic residential neighborhoods to the more suburban neighborhoods at the edge, and then even areas that are within the city limits that are still rural today. And so that cross grain is important to get an idea of what that's looking at. But one of the other things that we're going to want to get input from you, not only tonight, but especially during the charrette, is communities are becoming increasingly interested in not only just the use of land, but the form of development, the character of development. And so look forward to hearing and starting that conversation tonight and continuing that through the charrette. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liesl.
Thank you so much, Keith. All right, so I'm going to quickly talk about some of the things that we've been looking at as it relates to mobility. Of course, this certainly doesn't cover the gamut of topics. There's a lot of things that I won't be speaking on that we are taking a look at. But the map that you see before you there is just showing basically the functional classification of the some 180 miles of roadway that is in the city limits of Tullahoma. The majority of those roadways are classified as locals, So providing service and access to subdivisions, residential properties, for example. And then the collectors, which is your medium-sized roadways, those make up about 14% of those road miles. And then finally are the arterials. Those are your major roadways like North Jackson that provide more regional connectivity. So we've also been looking at traffic volumes. We have access to the Tennessee Department of Transportation's website and their data set. So we're able to pull, they have traffic counters embedded in the pavement, but they also do spot collections of traffic volumes throughout the year. So we have an idea going back for decades of travel, traffic patterns and traffic volumes. So we'll be, or have been evaluating those. And of course, to no surprise to you all, North Jackson Street, East Carroll, Cedar Lane, Wilson Avenue, your East and West Lincolns, those are the roadways that carry the majority of the volume in Tullahoma. Okay, so bicyclists and pedestrians, well, we're also considering mobility for the folks that choose or do not have access to a personal vehicle. Again, based on that TDOT data set, there's about 35 miles of sidewalk in Tullahoma. The majority of that is really focused in the older portions of the community near downtown. Excuse me. There's also 2 statewide bicycle routes that traverse Tullahoma that provide regional and statewide connectivity. And then there's also the Rock Creek Greenway, which is a great trail that runs along the Rock Creek and connects a number of Tullahoma's recreational assets. And then finally, as it relates, this is utilities, but utilities drives or can drive development. So we will be looking at and evaluating kind of those areas where there's still undeveloped land that are not being served by sewer or water, as well as those developed pockets that currently might not have access to sewer. So I'm going to pass it on from there. Woo. Skipping ahead. Sorry, Randy. Just told all your secrets.
Okay, hello again, everybody. Good to see all of you again. Just a little bit of background in terms of some of your socioeconomic conditions. You have about 12,000 jobs in Tullahoma. It's a very diverse economic base. The key sectors in town are actually healthcare, retail, professional and technical services, also manufacturing still, and accommodation services, which include hotels, restaurants, etc. You know what the major employers are, AEDC, but there are a lot of others. A lot of the contractors, federal contractors that are in town. There's companies like Wisco Envelope Corporation and others, and Coca-Cola, Tennessee Apparel, and others. So you have a very diverse economic base. Since 2002, the city has lost about 2,500 jobs over time. Many of those were manufacturing jobs. About 1,390 manufacturing jobs were lost. And the city, in terms of its share of the larger area, has been falling. That larger area includes all of Coffee County, Franklin County, and Moore County. It's called a micropolitan area. And you had about 40% of the jobs in that area around 2000, 2001 or so. It fell to about 35% in 2010, and now it's about 29%, according to the latest data that I had. Unemployment peaked at the beginning of the COVID crisis, pandemic, as you can see there on the chart, but has been falling since then. So luckily that's been going down. In terms of some of the trends, I know that you've lost some jobs, but there are some sectors in town that have been growing. Management services, which are sort of corporate types of jobs, those have been growing in Tullahoma. Tourism is growing, healthcare, administrative services, and the public sector to some extent. So that balances out some of the losses in manufacturing and some of the other sectors. In terms of demographics, I have some updated information hot off the press from the U.S. Census Bureau. We know that your population was increasing, and as of 2020 numbers, which were just released about a month ago or less for the city, these aren't even on my table there. But your population for 2020, the actual census number now is 339. So you've gone over 20,000 population. That is almost a 10% increase, about 1,800 people since 2010. So it's a little bit less than 1% a year in terms of population growth. In terms of the micropolitan area, which as I said includes Coffee County, Franklin County, and Moore County, the overall area is now 107,000 people. That's growth of about 7.5% or 7,500 people since 2010. So the area is growing. I think some of that growth has accelerated just in the past couple of years, partly during the pandemic, and a lot of people moving out of metropolitan areas into smaller towns like Tullahoma. The household base has also been growing, and incomes have been growing faster than the rate of inflation. So those combined create a market for goods and services and opportunities for businesses. Oops. It is hard to see these buttons. And with that, we'll go on to let Phil continue on zoning.
Okay, thanks, Randy. And just a couple more slides, and then we'll turn on the lights and start answering questions or hearing your ideas. So, when you look at the map up here of your zoning, and you can see the legend, you've got really you have a fairly small number of different zoning districts. You've got there are actually three, and I guess we need to update our color coding information. You have three commercial districts. C1 is for the downtown. C2 is more of a highway commercial, like a lot of Jackson would be zoned. And there's actually a C3 that's a neighborhood commercial. You've got two different categories of industrial. One's like a light industrial, the other one's more of a heavy industrial. And you've got four different residential districts that, as they go up in number from R1, which is the lower density, up to R4, which can include multifamily and so forth. And then AG, the green one, agriculture, you can do very low density housing there too, and obviously farm-related things and so forth. There's also a OS1, which is an open space, kind of a clustered approach with a fair amount of open space. So that's your zoning. And that's all stuff that may change when we do the place types map in the plan. Oh, there's also, we don't have it mapped up here right now. Now, maybe we do. I might have added that. Let me see. No, we didn't. There's also an urban growth boundary. We don't have the map of that right now up there, but we got the data recently for the plan. And mainly the urban growth boundary comes out of some state legislation from several years ago that required cities to think about where would they expand to. And your urban growth boundary is mainly to the north and lands to the south. And that's something that we'll revisit as part of this plan. It's on the wall, you're saying? Oh, okay. Yeah, so later on, when you go around to these different issue stations, you can take a look at that map for the urban growth boundary. Thanks. When it comes to your historic districts, you've got a couple of National Register districts, North Atlantic Street and North Washington. They're both very small as far as geographically. And you actually have a historic preservation ordinance that's been adopted. And what that does, it sets up a framework to have a historic preservation commission and to designate districts and to regulate development that occurs in there, like particularly your downtown would be a likely candidate. However, the trigger's never really been pulled on designating historic districts. So, National Register districts, for example, are more kind of honorary. They do come with financial incentives, but they don't offer any sort of protection of buildings. And this is a topic that's been discussed over the years. In fact, the city put together this kind of a preliminary set of ideas on potential local districts, and that's something that we'll take a look at. But a lot of it also depends on property owners that would be affected and sort of what their opinion is. So that's something that we'll be looking at. Okay, we can actually turn on the lights, and I think we're going to close the doors to try to keep a little bit of air conditioning in. And so I guess the way we've got it set up, and Winston can nod yes or no, but We got a microphone here. I don't know if we need to run the microphone out to people or if they want to come up. But anyway, what I'd like to do now is just have people. Leave it there. Oh, that's for filming purposes, right? Sorry about that. I almost blew the whole thing. I could never be a Hollywood film director, could I? For a lot of reasons. So anyway, I'd love it if you want to come up and maybe state your name and tell us what you'd like to see differently in Tullahoma, maybe 5, 10 years down the road, whatever. But what are things that we should be thinking about, and what are your ideas for Tullahoma? So someone's got to be the first one to come up here and share your thoughts. All right, we've got someone. Thank you so much. Usually once the first person speaks, people start to follow. It takes leadership.
Well, my comments are not in the field of your question. My comment is this. Are you going to be repeating all of this information at one of the other school meetings this week? Because if this is representative of planning, I'm sorry, there was no planning for this that I see. This building has such poor acoustics. We could hear your words ever so often, but not any complete thought or presentation was understandable. So are you guys going to go look at another room somewhere for your next meeting? And if so, is that going to be expected in the next week?
Right, that's a good question. I've never been to this space before tonight. I don't know how it compares with the next 3 nights at the other schools. I don't know, Winston, do you have any insights?
Sure, thank you for coming up and expressing your concern. Our school facilities are some of the best facilities that we have in Tullahoma. And one of the shortcomings that we have in Tullahoma is a place to gather with large crowds. So when you look around, you have churches, you have schools. We don't really have an event center here, so we chose the schools. And as we looked, we felt like the gymnasiums would be better than the cafeterias. So tomorrow night it'll be at East Lincoln Elementary. It probably will be in their gym. Their gym is so different from this gym, and we may have their own. We have our, the acoustics and stuff. We're going to try to figure it out, but we're going to all the quadrants. This is a long-time process. This is the first time we want your input. You can send information to us by email. This presentation, his presentation, this meeting, all the videos are on our website, so we'll give that to you. And in just a little bit, you'll be able to go around and talk at each station to each one of the planners and understand what they're trying to do and get your feedback more personally too. So that makes sense? Can you hear me? Okay. Is anybody else having the problem over here? Can y'all hear okay, or is it? All right.
Yeah, I think the other thing, I think the other thing is the spacing makes it tricky, because here's why. I was sitting right there in the corner. I heard every one of the other speakers perfectly. I had no trouble hearing them. However, the speakers right here, if you're back there, you're further removed. And that's part of this COVID thing we're dealing with, where you got to have the social distancing. So, sorry, it's kind of strange times we're living in, and things aren't always going to go perfectly. So, all right. So, what about some planning ideas? Yes, sir.
Thanks for being here. I responded to the survey yesterday and sent an email. It's a little bit detailed, but can't hear? Speak into the mic?
Perfect.
I can do that. So my thought was we should identify and amplify through very effective marketing the city's 4 distinctly unique quadrants, which the city's done. The chamber's all over that. Then identify safe walkable zones, which the group assembled last time talked a lot about, to connect those eventually, the 5 to 10 years you're talking about, and establish and publish somehow early in the process. And my strategy with the Air Force was always under promise, over deliver. So if we could just keep this to ourselves for now, to build the marketing tension. basically we would identify cornerstones in each of the 4 quadrants, and then open up public discussion to and within our own groups to name those quadrants. And by doing that, we share ownership, we establish propriety and responsibility for the things that are going to happen. One recommendation I had was from a good friend, a retired Navy SEAL who's now deceased, but brilliant man, who said that when we were building a museum at Travis Air Force Base, he suggested we put together a wall around the center of the entrance to the museum where we would invite all the school kids from each respective quadrant to do an art project and use a word, America, liberty, freedom, the flag, whatever. And all the kids would do an art project like they do in school all the time. And then we would digitize those down into about 2 by 2 inch squares to make a mosaic, to make tiles out of their work. Their names would be on them somehow, so that their families, eventually, when the cornerstones are actually built, they would be the first generation of community investors. The young, kindergarten to whoever wants to participate. And that ultimately the goal would be generationally with each successive school year to invite more children to participate, to have their artwork digitized and added to this structure. The cornerstone would be the orientation point within each school district or the 4 quadrants, however I don't know what the right language is. And then that would be the basis for maybe it would be a 2 or 3 foot high wall that marks this paved stroller walkway path that you've already done the hard work of defining 180 linear miles of roads. I didn't know that. And 35 linear miles of sidewalks. That's awesome. And I think then bring it all together, though, into whatever we decide our historic downtown, or if it's historic isn't necessarily the right word, but the prime real estate where there will be that gathering place that we all know would enhance all of our lives. If we had a convenient way to, it answers so many questions that were raised at the first meeting, where folks spoke of the need for a safe, recognized spot for teenagers to just be, to be themselves. There's some great kids around here. They are so respectful. Real quick, my wife and I just got here from Travis Air Force Base in California, and you may have heard of California. It's not like Tennessee. There's a lack of gratitude, maybe, is one reasonable way to say it, whereas there's tremendous gratitude here in Tennessee. People love America here, and they're not afraid to say so. They love God, they love family, they love business, and they're respectful. And from young to old, have we met anyone yet who didn't knock us over? We thought it was our California license plate. We thought they felt bad for us. So they were so nice. And then we got a Tennessee plate, and they're still nice. But I put that in an email in some detail, and I just think it's a great opportunity for collaboration.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and that's obviously carefully thought out. And a lot of communities don't lend themselves to these kind of quadrants like you have here. So it is kind of a nice, sets up a framework for planning. So thank you very much. All right, who else? Yes, sir.
I'm one of those types who typically doesn't need a mic, but I'll use one. My name is Jared Allen, and my question, or I guess suggestion, is going to be in infrastructure and facilities. So Tullahoma is obviously experiencing economic growth, as evidenced by companies like Publix and Hobby Lobby choosing us over Manchester, which has freeway access, which is fantastic. Tullahoma utility authorities with their light tube service, gigabit internet service, puts us ahead of other, Winchester, Manchester, even places like Murfreesboro. But one place that Tullahoma is lacking, and I'd like to see over the next 5 to 10 years, is an increase in cell coverage. So Verizon essentially has a monopoly on cell service in Tullahoma. I mean, other companies, AT&T and Sprint, have come in, but they essentially have no service. When my family moved here in 2012, T-Mobile actually let us out of our contract without penalty because they said we can't in good conscience charge you when they saw how there was no service. There's still not great service here, even with Verizon. So are there any plans, or is there a way to have a discussion about adding cell towers, zoning areas for cell service, and even using collaborative between the companies, because the companies all use each other's cell towers anyway. But right now, Verizon is the only company, for example, out by Gate 2 on Wattendorf. Verizon's the only company putting in cell towers now. But if we could look at and work with other companies, or even with Verizon, on increasing the cell coverage, and if we could make that easier for them through zoning and things like that, I think it could really increase the cell coverage in Tullahoma, which would benefit everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that would fall under our section of the plan we'll do on utilities, because it's telecommunications. Now, we're not doing an entire detailed, cell tower location plan or anything like that, but we can at least certainly address it at some level. And it may be one of those things where another, a more detailed study specifically for that issue needs to be done. So thank you. Great stuff.
No address or nothing like they do to me? Okay, all right. How you doing? My name is Royce Massengill, Tullahoma native again. Hello, everybody. Appreciate everybody coming out. So I was briefly looking, even though I was trying to hear you a little bit, I was looking up on the projector, and I'll just be honest with you guys, I'm not too well informed about everything that's going on right here, right now. So I'm glad that we're having this comprehension plan for the next 20 years. So it might be some dumb questions, but it just, they say no question is dumb, and I'm just trying to learn some things, but I also have some concerns. So if I can be informed on that. What I did notice up on that projector screen, I was looking at some of the initial observations, and I don't know if that's what you guys have already looked at or planning to look at, but either or. I was noticing that the south side of Jackson Street hasn't been mentioned, let alone on the other side of the tracks as much. I know that on South Jackson, from looking at the bar there, that is a commercial area. I think the C2 area, if I'm correct, the south end, I believe. I'm wondering, has there been any kind of talk on creating or bringing some type of business district on the south end of Tullahoma, which is South Jackson? I've heard, many years ago there were businesses there, gas stations. Of course, we got one in Shells, but that's a main highway between Tullahoma, Winchester, and a connection to all the way up to Nashville, basically 41A, if I'm correct. And I'm really more in tune with, to be honest with you, I'm really more in tune with the minority communities, the lower income communities. A lot of them come and talk to us on the show or just behind the scenes, and they're wondering, well, where are some of the business opportunities on the other side of the tracks, and especially on the south end. I was told that on the south end, it was, as they said, it's kind of considered a residential area, but to be honest, that residential area is just off side of Jackson Street. You take a right and you're going into the neighborhood, but I feel like there are plenty of opportunities to bring businesses there, job opportunities, even things to inform, if I must be honest, to inform people that may have been in jail. They need to get things expunged, and they need some jobs, somewhere close by. Because in those areas on South Jackson, on the east side, a lot of them feel like that where they're at is just where they're at. There's no other opportunity. They feel like they don't have opportunity. They feel like there's some discrimination. And I'm just wondering, what is it that we can do to bring more businesses on the south end of Jackson Street? Have we looked at that?
Thank you. Yeah, as far as South Jackson goes, I know you can't really see the map because the light's on, but I've got a good view of it here on my laptop. And from a zoning point of view, it is zone commercial, South Jackson. So, legally there can be businesses. I think your issue is more of an economic development one. It's like, how do we come up with strategies to revitalize? And that's something that Randy, our economist, will take a look at. Very good, thank you.
I was mainly concerned about sidewalks, like on the back way coming to this school, as for an example, Hardy and Pickett, very narrow roads, kids are walking, riding their bikes. I'm concerned about that. The other thing that I'm concerned about and was wondering about is the maintenance of our roads. Potholes all over the place. You drive to Manchester, things look nice, no big old potholes in the road. And the other thing was the maintenance around town with as far as the mowing and stuff. Everything just looks so unkempt, and I just wondered what's the problem?
Right, so there was, and Liesel, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there was a bike ped plan done a few years ago, and it did a real deep dive on the issue of sidewalks and looking at the greenway and all that. It identified a lot of spots in your sidewalk system where there are gaps that need to be filled in. So, I mean, a lot of what we can do with that issue is say, hey, we'll revisit that plan, see what needs updating, but it'll probably echo a lot of the plan. The other main idea on sidewalks, in addition to filling in gaps, is also just to extend the system, especially to key facilities like a school, right? Connecting commercial areas and civic areas and things like that. Thinking about what are kind of the anchors, and then how do you make the connections. So that plan looked at that a lot, and we'll revisit that as well. I'm trying to think of the other issues. Same thing with the greenway system as well. And then just kind of aesthetic issues, which get down to maintenance. So very good. Thank you. Perfect.
Okay. Do you know if or when we're going to get buses?
That's a great question. So, and you're talking about buses that are all over town that move around and drop people off. Right. So right now I know there's through the Southeast Plan or South Central Planning and Development District, and they have this program in 13 counties, and it's kind of an on-demand type service, right? Yeah. So it's some type of on-demand. So it's not like a
School buses.
Are you talking about school buses?
Yeah.
They don't have school buses? Wow. Because that was my first thought, and I'm like, no, they've got to have school buses. So, okay, well, that's a great question. We'll work on that one. Thank you. Great input. Thank you very much. That's an important question. Oh, sorry.
These are more city-wide issues and issues that are pertinent just to this quadrant, but the things that I am concerned about, not necessarily for myself, but for my grandchildren, are going to be people 20 years from here when I probably won't be here anymore. One of them is I'd like to increase and educate the people about the benefits of trees in our community. We have an aging canopy of trees in our town. Every time I drive down another street, I see another tree that's dying. It's expensive to replace them. It's very important that we do that and that we foster the kind of planting that encourages the planting of trees, both on private property and city property, because of all the benefits that we get from them. The cooling of the trees, and you sort of discourage the radiation from streets and roofs and things like this, the oxygen that they emit and the carbon dioxide that they absorb. So it's very important that we do that and have a program that maybe that the people in the town are aware of that, because I see perfectly good trees being cut down on private property, and I don't know why. But that's, I think an area as part of the Go Green initiative that we have that's really important for the people to be aware of. Next one is the downtown area. As y'all said at the first meeting, the downtown is the soul of the area. And I just like to encourage more enthusiasm about improving the downtown and making it more user-friendly, gathering places and things like that. Third thing is this is a planning issue, but a lot of discussion with people, and I think we're all aware of these things, but maybe everybody in town needs to think about it a bit more about how the city must become proactive in seeing to the widening of Cedar Lane. That's a very narrow, very heavily traveled street in our town, and there are no sidewalks there. And if we want to encourage more development of apartments along there, that's our sort of our apartment corridor here. We've got to really get involved and start pressuring the Department of Transportation to take some action to look at that. Every other town in this area has downtown intercity bypasses around the town, and we don't have anything like that. Some people have suggested, in addition to that, a truck bypass around the south end of town that might be good to keep the big heavy trucks off of Jackson Street. All of those things would encourage more commercial development in Tullahoma. So I'm interested in the town as a whole and this area too, and I just hope that everybody here, I'm sure they're all here for that reason.
Okay, I'll see if this works without the feedback sound. Maybe it was the two microphones in combination, but you raised a bunch of good things. First of all, on Cedar Street or Road? Lane, either. Oh, the third option. We heard some comments on that in one of our earlier meetings today, so that's definitely on our radar screen. Regarding trees, so this is a kind of a backup map we had because we showed this. We tried to be a little more concise than the public kickoff meeting, and I know most of you can't see this, but this is a map of forested areas, and you're exactly right. Trees bring a whole lot of benefits, and in fact, we've added to the background section, the draft background part of this, a new section on climate change, and we talk about the fact, the role that trees play in mitigating the impacts, and so that's going to be, because we've heard from other citizens about their concerns about the environment and what's happening and that sort of thing. So we're definitely going to address that. Same thing with downtown. We think that's a big strength of yours. There was an effort a few years ago to become a Main Street community, which is a downtown revitalization program, and it never really got going, but that's something we want to dig a little bit deeper into because I think it needs to happen. So thank you very much.
First off, your mic's feeding back because you're in direct line of sight with your speaker. So in the future, maybe two speakers that are pointed away from your mics will do a lot better in getting them off the floor. But my name is Alan Johnson, been a resident here since 1998, so 23 years. One thing that has been on my mind is, and it was mentioned earlier, the space where large groups of people in Tullahoma can meet in a single spot. That's something that we need to, I think, look at because the only other facilities we have are in Manchester or outside of Tullahoma. The other thing is, like Manchester, there really does need to be a place where we can do like a summertime outdoor concert series with local bands. I don't know if anybody in Tullahoma really knows that Tullahoma actually has a 21-piece big band, South Jackson Street Band, of which I am a member and the leader of. So it would be a great opportunity to get local bands like us, like Bad Monkey, and other bands a chance to perform for the community during the summertime. The other thing is, like other communities that may have the Strawberry Festival or the RC Moon Pie Festival, maybe Tullahoma needs to institute a yearly festival that would draw people in from outside of Tullahoma, much like other communities do. So that's all I am.
Great, thank you very much. One thing we've heard a lot of people bring up is the lack of a central gathering place, particularly for downtown. Most people talk about that issue in the context of downtown. You clearly need something like that downtown, and maybe even a larger venue for festivals and things, that would not be downtown, but somewhere else. But that's great input. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I think it was said we have 35 miles of sidewalk, not 3,500 miles of sidewalk. If you go downtown, we did it right years ago. You leave downtown, you head in any direction, there'll be sidewalks on every street, and most of them 2 sidewalks, one on each side, because people walked back then. Now we're doing Get Fit Tullahoma, Go Green Tullahoma, but we're not putting sidewalks in where the people who want to get fit can walk. You talk about Cedar Lane, some of the buildings over there had to put 100 feet of sidewalk in, but then there's one across the street that built an $80 million complex and didn't have to put a sidewalk in. What's good for Peter is good for Paul. A parking lot is not a sidewalk. Oh, well, they've got a parking lot. That's not good enough. If you're on a city street and you build something, you need to put a sidewalk in front of it. Everybody started building residential neighborhoods, and there wasn't much traffic, but there was still a lot of kids, but there weren't as many cars on the road back then. In 1966, you were lucky if you had a car. Now everybody in the family has a car. We're up 4,000 people from when I graduated from high school in 1967. 4,000 people in 50 some odd years. Okay? We're not building sidewalks. We've got to build sidewalks, particularly to our schools. And I don't care who you are, what you're building, you don't get opted out because of that, because the guy across the street's having to put them in. Well, you put them in too, on city property, city roads. Our greenway system, you talk about somewhere to go. We had an Angelou study several years ago that said the airport is the place, and it is. We redid that place out there. It's wonderful. At one point, some of y'all will remember, we had a balloon fest out there. Right next to the housing authority, there's a road that goes back to a baseball field, bathrooms, and it was on Worth property, and there was a big balloon fest out there. Run that greenway around out there, take some of that property and turn it into a gathering space. I think it was the Winter Olympics last time where one of the channels were around a fire pit and doing their announcing. Build something like that out there. Put some little sheds up where old men can go play dominoes or chess or whatever they want to do. Sit out there and play a guitar, and the next thing you know, that'll be the place to go and gather. It's away from everybody, away from traffic, and there's land out there, just all kinds of land. Run that greenway on around the airport out there and tie all of it together to a sidewalk on Cedar Lane before somebody gets killed there. Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely, there's no doubt that the greenway system can be expanded, and that's something that we'll have in our plan. With sidewalks, I was looking at the regulations the other day. So they're mandatory for both sides of all arterial roads. They're mandatory for both sides of all collectors. And if I recall, when it comes to other roads, which are more like neighborhood, what they'll call local roads, it's a little more, it's less clear on the requirement. It sounds, my understanding is that it's really more the call of the Planning Commission. I also understood that over the previous years, they were pretty loose on when they would require them. And there seems to be a new attitude in the city to try, to require sidewalks even in lesser roads that aren't arterials or collectors. And that's one of those things that can come out of our plan, a recommendation to say, hey, make it mandatory unless you get to a really low density area where you can't justify it, and make it crystal clear instead of leaving it a little bit of a gray area like it is now. But very good comments. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read this on behalf of my mom. She's not here tonight. She's not feeling well, but this kind of addresses the common gathering place. I think it seems to be a common theme. We're not going to get everything that everybody wants, obviously, but to try and help identify Tullahoma. So I'm just going to read this real quick and give you a copy, and I have lots of other copies if anybody wants one. But and it's very hard to hear, so I apologize. I'm trying to be clear when I speak through this. For the sake of Tullahoma's future growth, I suggest to think big beyond Tullahoma. First of all, a real town center could become a destination in itself. Furthermore, it could establish Tullahoma as a host town for the surrounding mid-Tennessee top attractions. So we have a lot of things around here. We have George Stickle, we have the Beechcraft Museum, we have other ideas. We have so many things to offer, so it could be a host town for those things, a place to stay a while. Business could thrive and tourism would grow. Even surrounding area attractions would thrive. A variety of new businesses would be attracted. So I recommend a central gathering plaza developed in the center of town, which is the entire block behind the businesses between Lincoln, Grundy, and Jackson Atlantic Streets. This whole area could become a town plaza unique to all of Tennessee, Resources already include a location with the necessary local businesses and restaurants that all have access to a proposed plaza. There could be the continuous entertainment provided by the casual acoustic Tennessee music in keeping with Tennessee history. As Alan said, we have lots of musical talent in this area that we could tap into. Small ensembles and solos could make music along the storefront walkways, and that could replicate something like Nashville on a smaller scale, obviously. And we could have a fountain in the center, and for that plaza. Storefronts could offer their own variety of outside seating. Entertainment could be their individual choice. Places beyond the plaza within walking distance would benefit. There are many other talents to draw upon for entertainment. So I'm just going to summarize then. Thank you for considering such a vision that she has held for over 10 years. Some of us just go there to look and dream. I suggest you go look if you want to see the vision.
Okay, how's that? I think this is the better microphone. The plaza idea. I think it's fantastic. And I like the detail, the thought that went into it. And I can almost guarantee, like I never say, oh, our plan's going to propose this, but we've heard so much consensus about the need for a central gathering place, and most people believe it's downtown, and I do too, that I can pretty well assure that the plan will feature that. And I'm seeing my colleagues nodding their heads, so thank you. Well, I think we've worn you down. So what we'll do now, the rest of the evening, we're going to be here till, did it say 7 or 7:30? Do you remember? 7:30. We'll be here till 7:30. So we're going to just, each of us will go to one of these stations. And again, it's mobility over here. Over here is land use and development. Back behind me is economics and housing. And in the back there is cultural and natural resources. So, I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and the other thing too, when you're not at one of these stations just chatting with us and sharing additional ideas you might have, there's that map over there that's between the number 4 and 5, and there's a set of dots. And you'll see the key at the top. It says, this color for where I live and this color for where I work or where I go to school. And it would be great if you have time to just stop and do that, 1 dot per issue per person, and we'll have somebody over there, Winston maybe, Winston's the designee on that one. But it would be great to kind of get a sense just on that little exercise of where people live and work and play and all those sorts of things. So thank you again, and we'll just set up and chat with you. Thanks.
Tullahoma Villages. And so, to mention what you also added, it would also be, I'm probably going to make this up, but economic inspiration. Just the same thing as when, something small, okay? We had an issue with the with the Jefferson Street Park and the basketball courts, and I kind of raised some pain about it to see if somebody was going to bite. But our basketball courts, it didn't have any of the goals were ripped, the nets were torn up.
So what are the children able to do?
Yeah.
Nothing for the babies.
Here's the situation. So the fact that we brought this up, I guess is why I'm glad we're having this, because we kind of want to be heard about it. But the fact that we made some noise about that, one of our aldermen raised some money, and they actually got all of our courts smoothed out, repainted and everything, and that gives something for the kids to look to see that, we got a clean, nice basketball court we can ball out at. It's inspiration. Is it being used, or kids using it? They're almost done with it. Okay. Yeah, they're going to do some more groundwork on the sides of it, but it's just the fact of creating an environment that inspires people to do something.
Sure.
Because I'm going to keep it real, let's just be honest. 95% of Tullahoma is basically white. 3% is black, and other smaller percentages Latino, Asian, and stuff like that. I noticed that even the Latinos and the Asians, they have their businesses and stuff like that. They're all located in this area, North Jackson area. And even for them, that's economic inspiration, right? But coming in here, one of the people that was from Colorado, the kid that came up to our school bus, his father had just said, when they came in from this side, they were thinking twice about living here until they moved up, until they started driving up north more, and they were like,
the whole city's
Yeah, it looks like a ghost town in a sense.
It does. On this end, it does.
Yeah, on that end. Looks all,
Yeah.
as soon as you turn shell.
Oh, for the longest, I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
I've been over here. No, I'm not.
Right. Well, and one of the things, I think, so when Randy does his market analysis, he's going to not only forecast what the demand is, but he's also going to, because he's a strategic planner, he's going to provide some strategies for how to make it happen. So it could be a thing where you could have incentives to make these kind of things happen and so forth. And so yeah.
I'd like, you've got some buildings down there that could be developed.
Absolutely. And this, we encounter this just about everywhere we go when it comes to downtowns.
It'd be helping, I think, make it run.
Yeah. And that helps to improve the vibrancy of your downtown. Yeah.
I saw Jonathan.
Yes. Okay. Good to hear you say well. Okay. And so you're saying there's still some development pressures happening?
This up in all up from here is being
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Off the corridor, the little subdivisions.
Raleigh Creek Road,
That's right.
all in this area. Settler's Trace, all this up in here. That's all very much. So, people, if they're coming down, especially to Walmart or wherever, they're coming down along the road. Because otherwise, you got to.
All right. How you doing? Boyle was a big client.
Yeah. This is Tullahoma's youngest plano. She's a great, but I can't.
Yeah. That would be too.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, it's Tullahoma's buildings.
Yeah.
Need some new thinkers and people come in with ideas from elsewhere.
How are you doing?
Yeah.